When I was watching interviews to prepare for this video, the director of ANORA, Sean Baker, mentioned a movie called Knights of Cabiria as an influence on this story. It's not super obscure or anything, it's a Fellini film, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and when I heard him say that, a light bulb went off. I couldn't believe that I hadn't made that connection, and it made me appreciate this film on a whole new level. If you haven't seen Knights of Cabiria, the stories aren't one-to-one, but it provokes a lot of similar feelings to ANORA of hope and heartbreak, wanting to escape your circumstances, the realities of life and social class, whether we choose to persevere despite them. It also has a powerhouse lead female performance from Giulietta Messina, and similarly, it has an ending that you will be thinking about for days and weeks and years afterwards. And we will be talking about that ending in ANORA, but I want to try doing a part spoiler-free, part spoiler review because I want to encourage people to see this film, and I know it hasn't been super accessible everywhere with the rollout, so once we get into spoilers, I will let you know, and it will be tagged. But to me, ANORA is one of the few films this year that really was hype-proof. It won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. It was getting praise left and right, and still, when I saw it at Fantastic Fest, I was so blown away, so moved by the ending that I just sat frozen in my chair through the credits. And I wanted to see it again before reviewing it, so I convinced my entire family to go, and they all loved it, even with the 2.5-hour runtime. That's how you know it's good. I think what makes Sean Baker's films so special and have such wide appeal is that they feel alive, like they unravel in the unpredictable and impassioned ways that life does. His characters feel real, and it feels like they truly offer a window into the lives of normal people that we might not come across otherwise. Whether it's sex workers, trans people, building managers, whatever, he's done that through casting non-actors, letting his cast improvise, and just letting the camera roll until you get to something really authentically human. And ANORA has been described as Cinderella for sex workers, that it makes Pretty Woman look like a Disney movie, and I don't like those descriptions, first of all, because Pretty Woman literally is a Disney movie, but it's also much more complex than that. It's a deconstruction of the American dream and of those fantasies that have been sold to us as we experience the harsh realities of life through the eyes of Mikey Madison's ANORA. I also think it is the funniest movie of the year, and it's not particularly close. A lot of people have been talking about this stretch where it just turns into a screwball 80s comedy throwback, and there are dozens of specific moments and bits that I could rattle off as being especially genuinely hilarious. It reminds you of what a lost art it is to utilize blocking, how characters are in the frame for comedic effect, musical cues, accents and language barriers are used brilliantly. There is a 28-minute long sequence in here that is just an impressive feat from a filmmaking and performance standpoint with stunt work and people talking over each other. It gave me the same worry for Mikey Madison's vocal cords as I had when I watched Isabella Gianni in Possession. But what I find interesting about that section is that it's when the film becomes something more complicated. You're sent on this wild goose chase through the working class world where everyone they encounter is a chef, a store clerk, a tow truck driver. And while it's being played for comedic effect, it still retains thematic significance as this extreme example of the lengths working class people have to go through at the behest of the people with the money and the people in power. You see it with this wealthy Russian family of the boy that ANORA meets, Vanya. You see it with the owner of the club that ANORA works at. And it's reflecting on the ways that being at the mercy of these people can turn working class people against each other, because what's ultimately discovered is the commonality that some of these people have, but at first they're at odds because of what they need to do to survive in a capitalistic society. When it comes to ANORA herself in all her glory, I love her, but with female characters there can obviously be some hesitation to fully embrace female characters that are written by men, especially when considering their traits that are uniquely feminine and things that are specific to womanhood. And I wouldn't argue with anyone who said they didn't get the characterization that they wanted out of ANORA. I would encourage people to seek out criticism and thoughts on both sides from people who actually have experience in the sex work community, but I found ANORA to be just a really fully realized, relatable, just electric character, not despite Sean Baker being the writer-director here, but because it was a collaborative effort from him and Mikey Madison. I think it is so cool that he saw her in Scream and in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and knew it was her and wrote the character specifically for her. And I love how in interviews, Mikey Madison has not shied away from saying, yeah, I did my due diligence and I did my homework for this role. I researched what it's like to be a sex worker. I spent time with that community. I read books, watched movies. I learned some Russian. And you know, she's just an actress doing this for a role. Sex work itself is very emotionally and physically demanding and often not acknowledged as such. So I'm glad that she took the care to do that due diligence and bring as much authenticity to it as she could. She just is the heart and soul and wonder of this film. And because of Sean Baker's style that we talked about, you don't know what's going to happen because neither does she. And with all the improv that was done, neither does Sean Baker in certain ways. And that spontaneity really brings her to life even more. You share Anora's hopes and dreams, and you feel her heartbreaks and her embarrassments and her revelations. I love the fact that she is 23 years old. She's a bit on the younger side. I've seen some people challenging the fact that she doesn't take action when she's put in certain situations that have legal implications, I'll say, to keep it vague. And I don't think this is a flaw in the script or the characterization at all. I think it's an incredibly fitting thing for this character who has like an insane fight in her and is really headstrong, but at the end of the day is young and doesn't have any power, and unfortunately is also naive in certain ways, like one is at 23. So in that way, it's a coming of age movie as well, and that aspect really stuck with me in the moments where, for example, she realizes the people around her might be right and what she really wanted to be true just isn't. Like, everyone knows that feeling of stubbornness to embarrassment, and you just feel stupid and you want to cry. And that's the real struggle at the center of this film for Anora. I really empathized with her navigating those things, and Mikey Madison just portrays it confidently and gracefully. She needs to get an Oscar nomination for this. I don't see a world where she doesn't, and I hope she wins. It is an undeniable powerhouse performance. I think this character could have very easily fallen flat without the passion that she brings to it. I mean, there's a moment in the trailer where she turns directly towards the camera and you can swear to God, like, the earth stops spinning. There's also been talk about supporting acting nominations for Mark Edelstein as Vanya and Yura Borisov as Igor, and yeah, hell yeah, they're both spectacular. Their characters are so different and they're perfectly portrayed. But I also loved Karan Karagulian, a longtime Sean Baker collaborator, and Vache Tomasian, who I guess is a really big Armenian comedian. The whole ensemble is just pitch perfect. And now I would like to talk about the ending of Anora. So if you haven't seen it, we are officially heading into spoiler territory, so you have been warned. Goodbye. I hope you're able to see the film and let me know what you think after you do. But I've heard the ending is profound, the ending is bad and undoes the entire movie, that some people don't really get the ending. And the first time I saw it, I again was so struck by it that I was just frozen and ultimately just felt really like moved. But the second time I was able to think about it more and I found it more uncomfortable to watch. Like, it kind of just feels bad. There is this sweet aspect to Anora and Igor. After a certain point, you pick up on where it's going, you see what they have in common, that despite them coming into each other's lives under the circumstance where he was like sent to kidnap her basically, as this chaos ensues, he is the only one who shows her real kindness and is clearly thinking about how she feels and how this situation is affecting her. But even then, it doesn't turn into some happy ending, and it's uncomfortable when she decides to have sex with him after he gives her the engagement ring. You don't know if she wants that or if you want that. I mean, the whole film we've seen sex and romance as something transactional for her. Either that or it's Igor himself who has used force against her, including in this very last scene. I don't think she knows either. It's this messy, confused moment, but it's the one where she finally breaks down and releases the weight of what's happened to her. I don't think it's relevant whether they're gonna see each other again or end up together. It's about what this moment means for Anora. So much of the film is generally about social inequities, and it's loud and crazy and funny, but we end in this really intimate, sobering, pretty devastating moment with Annie, and that was really powerful to me. And to wrap it back around to the Knights of Cabiria comparison, I think it's interesting that Baker doesn't replicate that film's arguably more hopeful ending. It's kind of like crying looking up versus crying looking down. I think his perspective is such that of a realist, so intent on showing things for how they actually are and kind of observing, You might think it's corny in that context to take all of this and say, keep your head up, keep going. He's kind of just like, this is what it is, and these are the people living it. And I can understand why some people might find that incomplete or unpleasant. I think you do have to fill in some of the gaps with her character. But I really think ANORA is a beautiful film with layers, many of which I didn't even discuss in this video. But I'm excited to hear thoughts from all of you, whether you loved it or have certain issues with it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on my first watch. I think the second watch would be closer to 4.5, but again, it had that impact on me. It is currently my second ranked film of the year so far. So let me know your thoughts on ANORA, guys. What do you think its Oscars chances are? What was the release like near you? Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep an eye out for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.